I read wherever I can. When I live in the United States, I read a lot in public transportation on the subways and in the buses. I live in Mumbai now. I've been living in India. I've come back to India for about 6 years now, and you can't really read on the trains in Mumbai because they're so jammed. You're just lucky to get a place to stand. So I've started to read much more in the house, which is a new experience for me because I've always thought of reading as something you did outside your house, on the trains or in a library. What I have on my bedside table right now, the first book is V.S. Naipaul's A Bend in the River. I read this a few years ago when I was thinking of making the transition from journalism to literature. And Naipaul is someone who's been both a journalist and a novelist, in that he's quite unique among writers today because I respect both his fiction and his non-fiction. The Bend in the River tells the story of an Indian African, Salim, who's trying to make sense of his life even as countries in Africa collapse around him, and he finds that as an Indian he has no place in Africa. And it manages to do something that few books have done. It combines a lot of ideas about human society and culture with a really heartfelt and emotional story of one man's attempt to make sense of his own life. The second book I have on my bedside table is Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. The title Invisible Man refers to the fact that the protagonist, who's never given a name in the book, is invisible to people around him just because he's black, and they don't recognize him as a full human being. And the entire book is, in a sense, an existential story because it's the invisible man's attempt to come into existence and to force people around him to see him on his terms. The third book on my bedside table is one I've had since I was in high school, and this is a selection of Robert Browning's poems. Robert Browning was an English poet in the 19th century who spent most of his life, or a large part of his life, in Italy. And he, in his time, he was considered, second only to Tennyson, even though I think he's less well known today. And to my mind, he was more successful in capturing unique voices and depicting states of emotions than any other poet I've read. So those are the three books on my bedside table.